So I'll be talking today about positive and negative statements in Buddhism. Um, Buddhism historically has presented the teachings in positive and negative statements. These are two distinct ways the teachings have been passed down to us. There's other ways, but I'm going to focus on these two. Early Buddhist practices focused on what is absent or not true, while later teachings emphasized what is present or true. Touching on these two ways, it's useful to think about positive and negative statements. Positive statements affirm what's present, what's there, what's real, what's true, while negative statements point out what's not true, what's absent, what's not present, a lot of nots, N-O-T-S, nots. So, for example, a negative statement might use a word like not or none to express what's missing or what's to be avoided. And early Buddhist teachings often focused on what was absent. That was a really kind of a progressive experience that you wanted to notice what's absent rather than naming what's there. The teachings were cautious and hesitant in their translations that we got at that time to label or define truth, instead highlighting the cessation of suffering, greed, hatred, ignorance. So I think this naturally led to an important question. If something is absent, what else is there? What can we become aware of when something's gone? What's changed or shifted? And this shift invites us to focus not on what's gone or missing, but on what is present or what we hope to cultivate, what we would consider the positive, what we hope will be there, or hints of what could be there. So instead of only noticing absence, we then shift to, and this is kind of the later teachings emphasis, on beneficial qualities like compassion, for example, and the many forms that various forms that it emerges in. Perhaps not fully as compassion, maybe just you see humility in your experience, or willingness, or some forgiveness, or even the simple desire to be compassionate, to be able to name those things and see them in your experience. Both approaches, focusing on absence and focusing on presence, are valid ways of knowing. But the contrast between these two may be why early Buddhism was seen or seemed to appear in a more pessimistic light, because we live in a world that really encourages positive, turning statements into something positive. So this framework of positive and negative applies to many teachings. I mean, I thought about the Four Noble Truths, that name, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the 5 precepts in Buddhism. And these are ethical guidelines that align our behavior with wisdom and ethical conduct. Most of you have heard of them. They're often in many communities recited on retreats or in practice sessions, workshops as shared values. And both Pine Street and Sati Sangha have them listed on our website and posted there with agreements for participation in reflective meditation. But we discuss them in Dharma talks, but you may not recognize them all the time because we don't often list them out, and they're blended with so many other foundational teachings. So if you're familiar with the precepts, it's likely you learned them in their negative form. That's how they've been classically taught. So for fun, I put them in their positive statements. And yes, that's the kind of fun I have. One of the things I do for fun, I've transformed them, flipped them into positive statements. So I'm going to list them now. So the first precept, do not kill, do no harm. We flipped to harm reduction, cultivate harm reduction. Cultivate universal friendliness is another way I've heard of it. The second precept, do not take what is not given. Do not steal. Flipped to practicing generosity, practicing giving. The third precept, avoid sexual misconduct. Cultivate contentment and satisfaction. The fourth, do not lie, gossip, engage in false speech. Speak truthfully, kindly. I always add when you can into these positive statements. Avoid intoxication is the fifth precept. Cultivate clarity, lucidity, and understanding. So while this exercise might seem a little simple or binary, creating it really helped my mood, my condition that I'm in. It was a lot of fun for me to write this talk. I've been dealing with severe vertigo since last week, and an old health pattern cropped up along with a new one in the midst of this. And I was in what I would call a very negative mood. That's a nice way to say it. And being with it was really unbearable at times. And I couldn't express myself in a positive way. There was just no way that I could do that. So I began considering what is valuable in negative statements. Why don't I explore them? So I started looking at the negative statements. I don't need surgery at this point. There's no anger coming up. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm actually not ashamed. Now, then there were times when there was anger. There was all of this other stuff. But a lot of the times I could see in what I was looking at value in some of the negative statements, what wasn't there, what was absent, and what didn't need to happen, what was gone, what wasn't even on the table. So this is the way I stayed with this. And I ended up turning into this talk. So I hope my exploration helps you to see that it might be useful to explore negative statements, your experience when it's framed negatively. And with a practice of reflective meditation, that both ways have a place. So I'm going to end here. And